Welcome to How You Livin, a transformative podcast featuring best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and minister, Dr. Rick Rigsby. And now, Dr. Rick.
Hello, friends. Thanks so much for listening. I'd like to start a conversation that will take a few episodes to complete. I've titled this conversation, The Essence of Greatness. Part 1 is subtitled, The Pain of Success. A few years ago, I read a very interesting book titled Leadership Pain, The Classroom for Growth. The author, Samuel Chan. Chan argued, quote, growth equals change. Change equals loss. Loss equals pain. So inevitably, growth equals pain, end quote. If we're not willing to change, don't expect to grow. And in order to grow, we must be willing to endure pain. Now, for many of us, our problem stems from continuing habits and patterns we've become accustomed to, even if they don't offer the desired results. Simply stated, we'd rather do the familiar and avoid the pain of growth rather than risk changes that might disrupt our carefully manicured routines. Remember the quote largely attributed to Albert Einstein? Quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. A price must be paid if you want to accomplish sustainable success. Growth is painful, so painful that many are fearful or discouraged to grow. This behavior that for years I saw in myself has recently led me to one fundamental conclusion. Not everyone will be successful. Everyone can be successful. We all have the capacity, but not everyone is willing to pay the price to be successful. The essence of greatness, along with good old-fashioned common sense, teaches us that the constituents of sustained success include a singularity of purpose, which produces a relentless, tenacious determination that results in a focus incapable of distraction. What surfaces right now is a very critical question I want you to ask yourself. It's a question that stems from a shallow, superficial culture that produces citizens who struggle with listening and focus. Here's the critical question. How can we decrease distractions and increase focus? There are all kinds of tips on the internet instructing us how to improve focus. A number of good suggestions. Many I've tried in the past only to abandon them after a while. But I recall praying on one occasion and meditating on Holy Scripture about my need to increase focus when I had this revelation from God. Focus is sustained throughout the day when your persistent focus overrides everything else. How does that happen? When your purpose overrides pain, overrides fear, and even overrides your sense of comfort and convenience. Let me say that again. Focus is sustained throughout the day when your purpose overrides your pain, your fear, and persistent sense of comfort and convenience. Friends, there is an inextricable connection to our purpose in life and our daily focus. The most important question I can ask during this episode is this: what is your purpose in life? In other words, what is your single most important priority in life? If you don't know what your single most important priority in life is, you will never achieve greatness. Mark Twain said it best: the two most significant days in your life, the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. There is a link between purpose and focus. As a man of faith who happens to be a pastor, I depend on Scripture for wisdom and direction. When I was struggling with this issue of focus, I rediscovered a simple sentence that sealed the deal for me. One statement by the Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, connected all the dots from purpose in life to single most important priority to a laser-sharp daily focus incapable of distraction to a relentless pursuit of greatness, despite fear, despite inconvenience, even despite pain. Consider the following. The Apostle Paul founded several churches, wrote many letters to those churches, dealt with hardship, beatings, distractions, betrayals, prison, but never lost purpose. Despite the distraction, he would always have a daily focus. Here's what he wrote. And in this sentence, you will see why he kept focus. He wrote this in part to the church at Philippi. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. That's it. Without purpose, there is no singular priority in life. Paul's priority, to live, is Christ. Without a singularity of priority, there's no focus. Without daily focus, we repeat familiar and comfortable rituals and patterns that keep us stuck. Behaviors that prevent us from realizing the essence of greatness. Our thoughts, words, and behaviors are actually admitting that we don't want to pay the price to be great. You see, unsuccessful people run away from the pain of growth. They see it as an unnecessary burden. However, successful people see the advantage and utility of pain and run toward the pain, realizing it's the only path to growth. In other words, truly successful people see opportunity, not pain. Ralph Waldo Emerson said it best, an opportunity missed is an opportunity lost. In perhaps the most profound statement in Samuel Chan's book, the author stated, quote, when you interpret your pain as bigger, more important, more threatening, more comprehensive than your vision, you'll redefine your vision down to the threshold of your pain, end quote. In all my years on the football coaching staff at Texas A&M University, I can tell you firsthand, not many players were thrilled with off-season training or the grueling stretch of two-a-day practices during preseason, especially under the unforgiving sun of Texas summers. However, when you're in the midst of a championship run, players don't mention the pain of preseason. Such thoughts are replaced by the gratitude they have for being pushed beyond what they thought was their capacity in order to prepare them for something great. Great people do what other people don't. And every great person I've ever met, they have one thing in common. They're convinced that pain is the prerequisite for growth. Football coaching legend Nick Saban said on one occasion, everyone wants to be great, but not everyone is willing to pay the price to be great. My father, the wisest man I ever met in my life, that third grade dropout, would often say to us kids, don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you won't do. I never understood that as a child and would often roll my eyes, that is, once my dad left the room. It didn't take many years until my adulthood to realize that my dad was absolutely right. His generation was right. That World War II generation understood one fundamental truth. Anything worth doing is worth doing the right way. And doing something right has a huge price tag. If it was easy, everyone would do it. You see, we live in a society today where we look for shortcuts to success. That statement is an oxymoron. If you're still listening to this episode, I'm going to assume that you're desiring to go to that next level, determined to pay the price to achieve the essence of greatness. Let me share with you a very personal story that has motivated this very public podcast and has changed my life forever. For the past couple of years, I've been on a life-changing health journey. Bottom line, I've gone from weighing 310 pounds to 180 pounds. More important, for the first time in my over 60 years on this earth, I'm healthy. Everyone these days wants to know my secret. They ask, how'd you do it? How long did it take? And these are valid questions, but they point to a deeper issue. We are attempting to pursue the essence of greatness in an outcome-oriented society, which refutes the reality that achieving greatness is really a process that demands that we commit and recommit every single day, that we endure the pain of the process every single day. I don't want to talk about the outcome, the weight loss. I'd rather talk about the process, because if you focus on process, outcomes will take care of themselves, which means if we're going to focus on process, we must reorient ourselves from a quick fix, shortcut mentality to a mentality that states, regardless of the pain of the process, I am on a journey day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. Length of time doesn't matter. What does matter is this: I will be relentless in my quest to work every single day to reach greatness. In other words, I shall consider it a privilege to pay the price for success. My health journey is the motivation behind this series of podcast episodes. With this as a backdrop, I want you to consider the following pains I've willingly endured the past few years, pains that I will gladly accept the rest of my life, pains that have allowed me to experience the thrill of achievement, pains that I no longer call pains, but opportunities. Here are my top 3 opportunities. You ready? Number 1, you must yield control in order to gain control. Number 2, you must be willing to have a teachable spirit. And perhaps the most important opportunity is number 3. You must answer the why question. Briefly, you must yield control to gain control. Friends, obviously at 310 pounds, my eating was out of control. In other words, nobody was going to tell me what to eat, how much to eat, when I could eat, when I couldn't eat. That was off limits. You didn't talk to me about that. No, I didn't listen to anybody. I didn't have anybody in my inner circle that was really challenging me. I wouldn't have listened to them anyway. No person, no common sense. Not even God was going to tell me what to do. Boy, did you hear that rebellion? Did you hear that prideful attitude? It wasn't until I yielded my will that I realized 2 critical things about my life. Number 1, I was an emotional eater. Number 2, I ate with my eyes. Now, following these discoveries, I sought answers as to how to regain control. This is when I discovered one fundamental truth that helps me every single day. There is a difference between hunger and need. There is a difference between hunger and need. By the way, this discovery was painful for a season, but today I consider it among my greatest opportunities. Number 2, you must be willing to be teachable. John Wooden said it best, didn't he? The great coach at UCLA, the basketball coach that won 10 national championships. He said on one occasion, live today as though you're going to die tomorrow, and learn today as though you're going to live forever. I want you to consider getting people in your circle that don't necessarily agree with you. People in your circle that will challenge you. People in your circle that may even offend you. People in your circle. Get people in your circle that are smarter than you. I love the old adage, if you're the smartest person in the group, you need a new group. Stop listening to limited voices. Limited voices. In other words, voices that just want to agree with you, just want to appease your sensibilities. You're not going to grow that way. Get people in your life that are going to grow you, that are going to stretch you, that are going to share wisdom with you. That's really important. And most important, be teachable. It was a nutritionist that really hit me when she said, you know what? You eat with your eyes, whether you're full or not, whether you're satisfied or not. You can have a 5-course meal, but see dessert, and all of a sudden you think you're hungry. And then she said this, Rick, there is a difference between hunger and need. You gotta be teachable though, which leads to the most important question. The why question is the most important question. If you cannot answer why should I change, you won't tolerate the pain of change. Here's my why. A couple of years ago, I'm talking to my wife and I said, I have come to the realization that there are not many people over 60 that are my age that weigh over 300 pounds. Friends, it hit me like a ton of bricks. You see, 28 years ago, I was a widower. And the last thing I want is for my wife to experience widowhood. I want to be a father to my 4 boys and hopefully a good example to my daughter-in-laws. I have grandchildren. I want to be Poppy to those grandchildren. I want to be around. Guess what the why question answered for me? Why are you short-circuiting your life with all the good that's in your life, with all that you're living for? Why not start thinking about others And as I began to think about others, I answered the why questions. Friends, these discoveries forced me to get out of the ruts of comfort and convenience and to start setting new expectations. And that's what I want to talk about in the coming episodes. Friends, I appreciate you joining me for this episode titled The Pain of Success. Subsequent podcast episodes continue this discussion, revealing lessons learned from my personal health journey. Look for these episodes under the title, The Essence of Greatness. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Until we meet again, this is Dr. Rick, asking the most important question I can ask. How you living?
Are you ready to make an impact in your world right now? Do you want to stop existing and start living your best life right now? Dr. Rick wants to give you the first chapter of his best-selling book, Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout, absolutely free. Just go to www.rickrigsby.com/free gift to get the print or audiobook right now.
This is the podcastfactory.com.